I almost just knocked over whatever light I have. Yay me! Damn light. I should move this before I ruin everything I know and love. I might just do that. No! That was the bad move. Plans. So many plans and none of them worked out. I was going to make it so either I was cosplaying as Lewis, or I was going to make it so every single part of the body paint thing that I did represented a character and how they died. That didn't happen. Because yesterday I was doing this. This is why I still have a bit of a dark tint to me. Black body paint doesn't entirely come off after one wash. Anyway, I didn't feel like doing another black body paint look today, so I didn't. I was also going to have Dad Ravelous on this episode of Behind the Dark Veil, but he's currently not feeling well. He's feeling well enough that he went to work, but he's still not 100% himself, and he's taking it easy at the time I'm recording this video. I was also going to do this during the day, but I didn't have any energy today, so I decided to just not do anything. So I'm recording this at night, hence the lack of proper ideal lighting. Hopefully I can edit any sort of issue I'm having with lighting out in post. I don't have an ideal setup for navigating key lights and stuff like that. I almost just knocked over whatever light I have. Yay me! It goes without saying that this video is going to contain spoilers for the Realm of Phobias Treachery, parts 1 through 4. If you have not seen part 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., any of those, any combination whatsoever, go back and watch them, otherwise I will spoil them for you in this video. There's no way around it. Even if you don't believe in spoilers and you haven't seen parts 1 through 4, what are you doing? Go watch parts 1 through 4. None of this is going to make sense. So parts 1 through 4, a lot happened. Literally everyone but 2 people are dead. Scratch that grammar. Literally everyone is dead except for 2 people. The traitor, who has been revealed, and the non-traitor. Part 1, you learn the nature of everyone's phobias. This is extremely important if you're trying to guess the traitor, you're trying to play along and do the murder mystery part of the story. If you do not pay attention to the phobias, you don't have a chance in hell of guessing who it is. Damn light. I should move this before I ruin everything I know and love. I might just do that. No! That was the bad move. I don't have a setup for this nonsense. Boy, eventually. In due time. I saw the signs, I didn't like them. You stay put where you are. That'll have to do. Don't care. Anyway, in part 1, you learn the phobias of all of the friends mentioned. Get out of my face. What do you think you is? Rude. Disrespectful. In part 1, you learn the phobias of all the friends. If you do not pay close attention to the phobias, to each person who has the phobia, you don't have a chance in hell of guessing who the traitor is. Also, you have to pay attention to the nature of the ritual. If you don't pay attention precisely to the nature of the ritual, if you don't pay close attention, I'll edit this all out in post, I don't fucking give a shit. If you don't pay close attention to the nature of the ritual, you also won't have a chance in hell of guessing who the traitor is. We'll come back to how you can figure out who the traitor is in part 4 when we get to part 4. But for now, keep in mind that a huge part of the puzzle is in part 1. In part 1, you can already narrow your suspect list down from 10 to 5. And here's how you do that. Major spoilers. So you learn that the nature of the ritual is whoever is doing the ritual has been trained their whole life for this day where they betray all of their friends by realizing their worst fears in a way that also kills them. You also learn that the nature of the ritual is they cannot be discovered. Their phobia cannot make them look suspicious. They cannot draw attention to themselves. They cannot be accused by name. And when they eventually go in to finish the ritual, they must do it via ritualistic suicide via a pair of scissors. It cannot be done in the Realm of Phobias. It has to be done when the traitor gets back after all their other friends have been eliminated. You have to look closely at the phobias and see which ones could work with those criteria. So let's look at the suspect list and see how you could figure out who the traitor is part by part. In part 1, like I said, you can narrow it down by 5. Lewis has a fear of agonizing death. That is not in direct conflict with the ritual because the ritualistic suicide could be absolutely agonizing. And maybe he's been preparing himself mentally for it to be an absolute horror show and bloodbath when he does commit the deed. So you can't cross him off yet. Mizu Hanamichi has a fear of success. Now, if she were the traitor, to realize that fear of success would be ideal for the ritual because you want it to succeed. She would also be successful at hitting all vital organs, slicing appropriate arteries, etc. when doing her part of the ritual. So you can't cross her off either. Sam also has a fear of success, so for the same reason you can't cross her off. George has a fear of betrayal. Now you could say, oh, that's a bit of irony. You could kind of potentially play with that. How can you involve treachery into the act of you ending your own life? With the pair of scissors, mind you. How does one betray themselves under those circumstances? Without lying. And you can't lie. You must be truthful. So we know it can't be George. Cross him off the list. Leo is afraid of getting kidnapped. What does that have to do with ritualistic suicide via a pair of scissors? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The death must be via scissors by one's own hand. So you can cross him off. It can't be him. Steve is afraid of being left to die somewhere stranded. Again, the death itself must be done by scissors. The kidnapping itself is not what would kill you. You have to die via the scissors. So that would technically make it so you're not realizing your own worst fear. Not even technically. You're not realizing your own worst fear. You can cross off Leo, you can cross off George, you can cross off Steve. To look at the list further, it can't be Rob, because Rob has a fear of failure. To realize that would mean failure of the ritual. So it can't be Rob. So you can cross him off. That's 4 names already off the suspect list. Carrie has a fear of death in general. You can't cross that off yet. You need more to work with. What about Liz? Liz has a fear of dying alone. I mean, the nature of the traitor's part of the ritual is that you are alone. That is an easy loophole, so you can't cross off Liz. Klaus, drowning is not death via pair of scissors by one's own hand. So again, you can cross off Klaus. So already in part 1, without knowing anything, without any of the deaths happening, you can cross off 5 people off your list. And thus concludes part 1 as far as the trying to figure out who the traitor is part of the story goes. The ritual commences. There's another warning that says the traitor cannot be accused by name. Keep that in mind, that'll be important later. They all end up being sent to the Realm of Phobias via some sort of eldritch abomination, time warp, reality shattering type of dynamic. There's also a light in the distance, beckoning them to it. Spooky. Other than that, it's a realm of true darkness. And they can't find Lewis. That is the end of part 1. In part 2, as they move closer to the light, they hear that it's not a silent light. It is screaming, suffering screaming, dying, suffering screaming. And the sound of burning wood, the smell of burning flesh, it's Lewis. And by the time they reach said light, he's already dead. Time works differently in the Realm of Phobias. You start dying, that clock is just very fast and you're gone. Time works differently there. That's another important factor to keep in mind throughout the entirety of this story. So now that Lewis is gone, you can now narrow the suspect list to 4. After this, you find out that Rob is dead. He got his head smashed in. Someone basically curb stomped him without a curb. They basically just smashed his skull on the floor of the Realm of Phobias. They discover that Rob is dead. It's sad. All of these are sad. Like, this story is a tragedy. That is also important to keep in mind when you're reading this. Not a happy ending. But me as a writer, if a story ends in tragedy, that means the story is not completely done. There's going to be a redemption arc, or something involving revenge later, or something that resets the horrible events and makes them so they never happened in the first place. I like happy endings or proper revenge, justice. These are all things that I look for as a reader. These are all things that I implement as a writer. With that being said, you now have warnings and all that stuff. This is a tragedy, but it's not a permanent tragedy. Things do get better. In what way things are going to get better, I'm not going to let you know. Just in case you do believe in spoilers. I don't, but in case you do, it'll get better, but you'll have to wait and see how. Where were I? Where was I? Another death happens after that, and it's George. So that's not new information. No one new to cross off. And that's basically the end of part 2. In part 3, probably the saddest so far in this series, we have the death of Leo. Now, even when I was writing this, I was kind of sad. The reason why I say kind of is I know this is fictional. I'm writing this as the writer. But it still was tugging at the heartstrings a little bit. It still made me sad to write Leo's death. It's very tragic, and it probably will make a lot of you cry. Sorry about it. I mean, I'm not. I have to write a story. What I mean is, I'm sorry about making you cry. It's gonna happen. I play with emotions when I'm doing stuff with my stories, just like any good writer should, in my opinion. If you're looking for happy stuff, I write that too. This is not a happy story. But yes, so Leo is dead. Death is tragic. He's mourning the loss of his lover, Rob. It is what it is. And the traitor has to take advantage of that vulnerability. That is their moment to go in for the kill. They kidnap him, bring him into the darkness. It's a very sad part of the story. Shortly after that, there's a bit of a fight between the remaining friends. Accusations are thrown. Friends aren't trusting each other anymore. Something is wrong. Sam wants to prove that she is not the killer. She runs into the darkness, and naturally, she's dead. Now remember, Sam's fear was success. So that's another person you can cross off the list. You know it's not Sam. So now you just have 3 suspects. Everyone wakes up to see the dead body of Sam. Steve is absolutely beside himself with rage. He's realized that something is hunting them, and there's nothing they can do about it. He's livid. At the beginning, a sort of shadowy entity snatches people from the light of the burning crucifixion into the darkness. First is Mizu. She gets snatched into the darkness. Remember, that's one of our suspects. Then shortly after that, Steve gets snatched into the darkness. We know he's not the traitor. Carrie gets speared through the chest, killing her on impact, and then pulled into the darkness by whatever was holding said spear. Carrie's fear was death in general. She was still a valid suspect. We still had 3 people. But she's gone. Klaus and Liz are holding each other, crying in each other's arms. And then Klaus is snatched away into the darkness. So the only one in the light of the crucifixion is Liz. Now keep in mind, everyone else is in the dark. And the ritual says that the murders must happen by the traitor's own hand. Mizu is in the darkness with everyone else, so she could do it with her own hands. Liz is still in the light of the burning crucifixion, away from everyone else. So there's no way she could do it with her own hands. And that is how we know that the traitor is Mizu Hanamichi.